Hey guys, welcome back to the It's Really Not That Deep podcast. If you're new here, welcome. If you're not new here, thanks for coming back. If you guys could leave a like or subscribe or follow on whatever app you're on, it's really helpful for me. It really shows me that people are listening and makes me want to keep creating. So if you could give me some feedback, even just through a like or a subscribe, I would really appreciate that. So, this week has been kind of crazy. I went through a little bit of a crash out in the beginning of the week, and ever since, it's just been really busy. I am in school, I'm in my master's of psychology. I do work a job at the same time, and I'm doing this podcast and content creation, all things that I really enjoy and really love. But it's been a lot. So I really wanted to talk about burnout today. But then I was like, wait, why harp on the negatives? So I will do an episode about burnout eventually, but that's not what I'm bringing to you today because I didn't want to feed into my lower vibrational energy. So today's episode, I actually recorded the same day I recorded my first solo episode, but I really didn't like it. And I wanted this one to be really good for you guys. So, this episode is called The Lazy Man Does Everything Twice. This is something that my grade 3 teacher said to me, and it stuck with me ever since. So, that's how you know it's a good line. And I'm sure we can think of this many different ways, but it really comes down to the fact that when you try to take the easy way out of something and you cut corners, you end up with a shitty result because you didn't really put in the work that you know you're supposed to. And then you usually end up having to go back and do it again. So, in an effort to save time and cut corners, you're actually making the process so much more annoying, so much longer, and pretty much doubling the work for yourself. Despite me knowing this since grade 3, I cannot tell you how many times I've taken the lazy route and then had to redo the whole project. And by project, this can be school, this can be anything. And don't get me wrong, I get it. Our lives are overwhelming, and sometimes we just want to do the bare minimum so we can check that task off of the list. I totally get it. But the problem here is we think that this is being efficient or the lazy, easy way to do it, but it's actually the highest effort way to live. Because the tried and true unbreakable law is that the lazy man does everything twice. So, today we're hacking the shortcut mindset. We are unwiring all the beliefs that we have about why we do this. We're also going to define true efficiency, which is never about speed, and dive into how a painful, hard 10, 20, 40 minutes now is going to give us so much peace in the future. So, the first segment is all about the psychology of future debt, and we're talking about how our brain will sacrifice tomorrow's peace for today's relief. So we want to make today easier, even if that means not putting in 100% for our future selves, not really showing up for our future selves. Something that a lot of my friends have explained to me, and especially those with ADHD, is that they can't foresee negative outcomes. So we can easily see how this leads to procrastination. If you can't foresee the stress and the mental pressure that leaving a paper to the last minute is going to put upon you, you're more likely to do it because you're not really driven by that anxiety because you can't feel it now. You can't really foresee the negative outcome. And the truth is, our brain is hardwired to prioritize immediate reward or relief. We love those feelings. The relief of finishing a task, even poorly, feels great right now. So, greatly understanding that this is a very difficult pattern to change, I just want to break down how it works, and maybe it'll start to make sense for you in a way that it hasn't before. And so, once it makes sense to you, you can start to implement it in ways that will work in your life. Okay, so I'm going to explain this with an example. I bought a bed from IKEA and I had to set up this bed, and that was a pain. And while I was doing that, I thought to myself so many times, like, oh, I just want this to be over. Like, how can I do this the quickest possible way? I had my dad and my sister with me, and they slowed me down, and we actually built the bed very well. But what I realized is that if I did cut the corners and not take my time with the original task, the bed would have broke. The bed would have broke, the bed would have been squeaky, and it would have been super annoying, and I would have had a much bigger deal on my plate. I would have had to then do it all again because I didn't do it right the first time. But the cost later on of the broken furniture, the F on the paper because you used AI, or the massive mess in the kitchen is abstract and distant. We're not worried about that right now because it's not what's in front of us. We're not thinking about our future self that's going to have to deal with that. We're thinking of how can I make it as easy as possible for me now. But like you understand that that's not the way to go, right? Right. So I like to call this the work debt analogy. And it pretty much sums up that you will owe the extra work later. If you cut the corner now, it's going to come and bite you in the ass. And it accrues. It multiplies the stress, multiplies the time, and usually involves some sort of embarrassment because you didn't do the task well. So I think of this in like a paper. I just recently submitted a paper and I spent a lot of time on the paper, but then I cut a corner and I didn't proofread it very well. And the amount of time that I've spent worrying about that and going back to check it, but then having like remorse and being like, oh no, it's fine, like whatever, it's already submitted. But then I keep going back to it and I keep worrying about it and I keep checking it. And the amount of energy and time that I'm spending on that already submitted paper is ridiculous. And if I had just proofread it before I submitted it and taken the extra 5, 10, 40 minutes, it doesn't matter. I wouldn't have to worry about it. And I'm sure you can think of a context in your life that this applies, whether it's making the bed or cleaning the kitchen after you bake, or working on a paper or a group project and then being embarrassed when you're standing up there and you're like, oh my God, I really probably should have rehearsed. So, for our next segment, we're going to be talking about 2 killers of efficiency, not killers in a good way. Think back to a time in your life when you rushed a task, probably earlier today, if we're being honest. When that task is rushed, we rarely finish it. We usually just like leave it open and pending. And every time you have to reopen, reread, or refix a rush task, you pay the toll of context switching. And so, in this context, this means the 15 to 20 minutes that it takes your brain to regain full focus on the original task. And that's where all your time is going. So, I'll go back to this paper, for example. When I was writing it, if I had just proofread it in that moment, I would have already had all the information primed. I would have known exactly what I was talking about because I just wrote it. I would have known exactly what the instructors were looking for, where I got the sources, all that stuff. Because I opened it 3 days later and then was worrying about it, I had already forgotten all those things that were important. So for me to realign with that task, it would have taken me like 15, 20 minutes just to get adjusted. That's such a waste of time. Because again, if I had just done it in the first place, and listen, we're not perfect. We all make mistakes and we all cut corners sometimes. Sometimes it's inevitable. It's about cutting down on this. It's about doing it again, like we talked about 1% better last week, 1% less. I mean, it really is getting 1% better, but just small cuts at a time, small rewiring of next time you're going to be lazy about a task, just think about this. Consider your options. You know what I mean? So that 15, 20 minutes that it took to get adjusted, I could have been working out. I could have been working on a new project. I could have been checking something else off of my list that I have to do, but no. Clearly, I'm upset about that paper, but hopefully I get a good mark. And the killer number 2 of efficiency is the failure standard. When you accept a rushed, sloppy job, you're training your brain that low quality output is the standard. You just produce low quality output. Because if you're always cutting these corners, you're always missing important things. You're rewiring your expectations, but not for the better. And you're making mediocrity your default. You don't want to be mediocre. I know you don't want to be mediocre. You want to be special. You want to be good. You want to impress people. So do it. So work at it. So just another example of this would have been years ago because I'll literally never do this again because of how big of a pain it was. I was baking, and when you're baking, there's so many like bowls you use and ingredients and blah blah blah, and you have to put it away and clean the counter, you know, if you've baked before. I decided to put that off. So I left all of the dirty dishes in the sink overnight. I didn't even soak the bowls. And everything got crusty and it was so much harder to clean it in the morning. Like I made my life 10 times harder by not just cleaning it. Lazy man does everything twice. Not that I did it twice, but like I had to just go through so much worse because I didn't do it in the moment. And it probably took twice as long. And then in the morning, I was upset with myself and I knew I'd be upset with myself. And that's not how I want to wake up. I don't want to wake up being like, oh my God, Joelle, why did you do that? I want to be like, look how you set yourself up. Okay. And that's a really important mindset shift because all of this is great to know, but I really think that everything starts with self love. So if I love myself enough to show up for myself in a way that's going to support my future self, I'm going to do it because I care so much about myself. And just like I like to take care of the people in my life that I love, I like to take care of myself like someone I love. So in these moments where I'm like, okay, I could either take the easy way out and save time and be lazy, or I can go the full mile. I think, how is my future self going to react to me right now? Is she going to be mad at me or is she going to be proud of me? And I'm choosing proud every time I can. And that's where my discipline comes from. That's how I do hard things because I have a vision. I have a vision of like my goals and my passions and blah, blah, blah. All that stuff is great. But just as simple as thinking of my future self, whether that's in 2 hours, in the morning, in 3 weeks, I want to impress that girl. So I'm doing it now. So clearly, I feel passionate about everything coming from a place of self love and all self growth coming from self compassion, but that's an episode for another time. So, once I heighten us up with the big problem that we all do and why it makes our life so much harder, I always talk about how to rewire this. So, very small, actionable steps to move away from this pattern and rewire our patterns, and in turn, become our highest and best selves. So, segment 3, we're going to call it the Do It Once framework. And the main idea is we have a new standard of completion. We are setting the standard of better completion to break the cycle. We will not stand for mediocre output. So, the first step, like I kind of just touched on, is the future self test. So, before you mark something as done or decide you're going to procrastinate and avoid this task, ask yourself, am I creating a problem for future me? If future me is gonna have to come back and fix this thing and like redo it, then current me is not doing the job. So I may as well just either not do it or commit to the bit because this half ass thing isn't working. So that's step number 1, checking in with your future self and testing you. Step number 2 is the 10% quality assurance rule. So from now on, any task that we spend X amount of time on, we take 10% of that time to make sure we did it well. So I like to do this every 30 minutes. Every 30 minutes that I'm writing a paper or doing a podcast, I like to check in and think like, okay, let's audit this. Let's quality assure this, make sure it's good. Because if I'm 30 minutes into something that will take me 4 hours, I would rather know now that I'm not doing a good job than at the end of the 4 hours and have to either produce mediocre output or redo the whole thing. So that 3 minutes out of the 30 minutes is like a 10% insurance policy against the 100% time loss that I could have. And so I've started to do this with everything. When I'm doing my makeup and you're like, oh, wait, it's kind of not coming out well because I forgot to wash my face before. I can either suffer the whole night knowing that I should have just washed my damn face 5 minutes into my makeup rather than keep going and keep having the cognitive dissonance of, oh, I should have done something different. Just do it. Again, easier said than done, but I'm here to tell you what to do. And the third step is define done as done. A task is only done when it's finished to a standard that you won't have to return back to or think about again. So actually pressing submit on the paper rather than just having it done in a done folder or posting the photo instead of keeping it in your drafts. Stop living in the middle of 100 half done tasks. That is so much wasted mental energy. So, a big problem here is a lot of us equate lazy with relaxed, but that is actually not the case because the person who is lazy is the one who is constantly putting things off. So, they are stressed, switching context all the time, and constantly cleaning up old messes. That does not sound fun, and that's what we're trying to move away from. They never get to work on exciting new things because they're always buried behind 100 things that they should have just done last year. The person who is thorough is the one who gets to be relaxed. They do it right the first time so that they can live the rest of their time in peace. They know that they're doing their best and their best is all you can do. So they're able to be like, okay, I can actually close this and move on. I put my effort in. I did everything I could, and that's that. So peaceful. So today, challenge yourself to take the high road. What does that look like to you? Reflect on your day, reflect on your week. What's one thing that you did that now you're going to do differently after listening to this? This is going to help you enjoy your tasks so much more because you don't have a million things on your mental plate at all times because you're working through one by one, putting in your best effort. What is the point of output if it's not your best? When you're half-assing all these tasks and you're just trying to get them done and that's your mindset, let me just check this off, you're not going to enjoy it. And I know that some tasks will not be enjoyed. Some things you really do just have to plow through and get done, but I know that's not your whole life. What can you start enjoying more by being present, being conscious, being thorough, and doing your best? And then you get to be proud of yourself and show up for yourself in so many new ways. Comment down below one thing that you don't want to cut corners on this week, one thing you want to show up for yourself for completely, and how that area of your life would look if you did this consistently. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you have a beautiful day.